On this week's GTA 6 o'clock, the I've Seen It report debunked.
And still, of course, like we discussed last week, might be correct.
The writers behind GTA 6.
Who is a writer on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
And new reports on the price at launch.
GTA 6 will cost somewhere between $80 and $100.
It's all here on this week's GTA 6 o'clock. Yes, hello and welcome to episode 57 of GTA 6 o'clock, broadcasting you live from downtown Los Santos. I'm JJ, your host, and you're listening to the world's most in-depth and best connected GTA 6 show. Of course, I am not here alone, and today I am joined by the meat horse whisperer himself, Dan D.D. Dawkins. You enjoyed that intro, Dan? You made a face.
Well, it's an unusual introduction, and if we weren't so busy with information, I would perhaps investigate it deeper.
Okay. No, you don't want me to do that again then. You're fine. We'll see what happens next week. Any suggestions for what Dan's handle could be in the comments below,
In
please.
the comments, please.
So we have, yes, a few meaty topics this week. First, I did want to discuss a couple of things that we tackled last week in a bit more detail. Thank you for all of your comments on that. Some suggesting details from the hands-on report have been taken from Red Dead 2 and expanded upon. For example, Woo Waters left a comment that said, the person is going off what happens in Red Dead Redemption 2, where cops will take a dead body away, animals will decompose over time, etc. We had other people like Mr. Pineapples adding, for what it's worth, the DMs, the Reddit leaker said, that they were a woman who was contracting at Rockstar and was having a fling with a permanent member of staff who showed her the game. Pinch of salt stuff, obviously. Which it sounds even more wild to me that could be a suggestion of how this might have happened, but there we are. I have been thinking about it a fair amount this week, and I would say now, for me, I am pretty certain that these descriptions have come from things that were in the 2022 leaks and just sort of built upon. In particular, the description of vehicle physics being way more realistic and crash physics, mentioning of like headlights falling off, wind moving poles and road signs, and the description of if it's a really violent and high-speed crash, the cars will bend and snap in half, for example, like hitting a pole that's not destructible. If, and you will correct me in the comments, I'm sure I'm wrong, if I remember correctly, there were a couple of clips in those 2022 leaks which featured driving. One of those clips, I think, showed bodywork coming off the car that you were driving as you hit a barrier. And then there was a Reddit post, as I was looking back into this from 2 years ago, from Heyesh88, that said, I wanted to share some details I noticed in one of the videos from the leaks and get your thoughts. Anyway, there's a video where the player is on a truck aiming and shooting at two police cars chasing them. One of the car rams into a street sign and bollard, knocking them down, while only the bumper end by the wheel, not the whole bumper, pops off and slides across the street before hitting the curb and sliding and stopping in another direction. The same car goes on to hit a boulder near the sidewalk and flies into a nearby tree, stopping the car and making it fall straight down. By this point, your driver is too far away for you to see the tree branches sway. I thought the bumper end breaking off the car was interesting, especially that it hit a curb and slid off in the other direction before stopping. So, if you put all of those things together, added to what I think are some other multiple clips where you can see trees and foliage moving in the wind in those 2022 videos, I would suggest what is happening is these details that you see in these videos have been expanded upon in a believable way, and still, of course, like we discussed last week, might be correct. But I think that they thought that those videos were like, now in 2025, 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and people might have forgotten about those little details enough for them to go, hey guys, I've seen a build from last year. Here are some things. I'm sure you guys have thoughts in the comments about how accurate that is. I don't know if you have any further thoughts on that, Dan, but I'm suggesting they've looked at all those leaks again and just, built upon some believable facts.
Yeah. I feel like I couldn't say either way whether this is true or not true. The entire thing about, oh, and by the way, I'm a woman who was seeing a man and it was a relationship. Weirdly, that corroborating information makes it feel more suspicious.
Yeah.
Despite the fact in itself that's plausible.
Yes, people can have relationships.
Yeah, and
I will allow that to happen.
And trust builds and that sort of thing can happen. So I understand all of that, but something about it feels a bit too, they're over proving a little bit. But we can't tell. So it could be true. And then exactly to what you said, all of this stuff does feel like an extrapolation of what we've seen from the leaks. I actually think in the fullness of time, I don't know, 70% of what we're reading here will probably be true. I think these all sound like ultra plausible things that you expect GTA 6 to deliver.
Yes.
So what you've said is correct. And also, like, if you were faking this, basing it on the leaks would be a good idea. But then if the leaks, as we know, the leaks are true because they're the leaks, well, of course the stuff is true because it's the same game, So the version you'd have seen would have been a build on the leaks. So, I don't know what, I can't really add anything else to it in terms of saying it's true or not. I just think it's a very grounded set of predictions or reports that could or could not be true, but I actually think a lot of these things are going to be in the game.
Yes, and like you say, of course they're true because some people have seen videos of a build of the game that has those things in it.
Yeah.
To an extent, there's no things in there where wind is sweeping through cities and moving telegraph poles and road signs, but there are clips of cars, bodywork falling off and that kind of thing. So is it too much of a stretch to say, oh, other bits of the car might fall off? No, of course it isn't, because we've seen clips of that happening in the past. And those videos were from 2022, right? That's 3 years ago. Over 3 years by the time the game comes out. And the amount of improvements that would have been made since then and changes and things, you can quite easily, as you say, suggest that some of these things are going to appear in the game. And of course, then if that person is still around on Reddit at that point, can come back and go, look, I was right. I told you about all these things. But I think there would still be a little bit of, I don't want to say like a distrust, but there would still be a little bit of, a thing going, was the thing you said actually really, did that person actually see the game? Even though your post has now become correct. But, it could have just been a whole load of speculation and guesswork. We will see. We might not ever know.
All I'm going to add before we move on is to say, remember this part of our conversation because I'm going to mention it again when we talk about some of the plotting and themes of GTA later in this episode.
Right, let's get into some of the things about today's episode then, and I'd like to talk about the story of GTA 6. Now, obviously, the key beats are going to only be known to Rockstar themselves at this point and everybody working on it. The only snip of info that we have is that it's some kind of Bonnie and Clyde story, or the thematic of a Bonnie and Clyde story might be appearing in the game. Of course, we've seen comments that some of the key Rockstar figures have left between GTA 5 and GTA 6 because it's a massive amount of time between those games. And the story and the feel of the game might not be the same. There are some people online going, because those people have left, now there could be some differences. Personally, I don't think that that's going to be a problem. I don't agree that those people leaving is going to dramatically change, because there are still some people there who have worked across multiple GTA games and will probably be like, this is the way we do things. But a great way to investigate this is to look at the writers who are now currently on board. We're going to go through a few of them. These obviously aren't the key people. They're going to be part of a much bigger team. But some of the significant players in the game now are, let's go through these one at a time. There's Jeff Tolopsky, who is a writer on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, who is now an associate writer at Rockstar Games. He actually only started in January 2024 up until now. And his LinkedIn description says, Jeff is a writer who currently works for Rockstar Games and whose previous credits include NBC's Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He writes primarily in the comedy space and has experience in TV, film, video games, and sketch comedy. In addition to writing professionally, Jeff also directs, writes, and teaches at the Upright Citizen Brigade Theatre in Los Angeles. So we're already off to a good start, I would say. The writing in Brooklyn Nine-Nine has been pretty good. And
it's a funny show.
It's a funny show.
Yeah.
And to see people like this coming in when what we think might happen is, there's going to be heavy police presence in GTA 6 in one way or another. But, even when we look back at GTA 5, there was the thematic of how the police work with people within the world and all of that kind of stuff. Is that going to be expanded on at 6? If it is, Jeff is a good person to have on board to be able to balance that comedy and seriousness, I would say.
Something that I don't know the timelines or what's happening. If he's joined in 2024, it says Jan 2024, so a year ago, you would imagine by that stage a lot of the core storyboards, dialogue trees, etc. will kind of be locked. So I wouldn't have thought, and I know a lot of Hollywood films get infinitely rewritten around the same structures. So maybe he's done a bit of rewriting or a bit of tweaking. It doesn't seem like someone who's been brought in to write the core story. It would have been too late by that stage.
Yes.
I do wonder a bit whether some of this could even relate to online and or 5M, given Jeff's background in he does improv theatre, and 5M is a role play improv, and again there may be some of that is you just make it up or will. And I've talked about this on previous shows. I think if Rockstar want 5M or the kind of role play community to work, they have to do a bit more hand holding than you just make it all up yourself. So having someone on board who might know how to structure improv or to structure something this is such unmapped territory for us, so I can't really speak any more than that.
All speculation.
But I could see a line through where having someone in your team who understands improv, and even improv is not totally improv, it's often improv based on structure. So having someone who understands the structures that can facilitate interesting emergent conversations would be helpful. Who knows?
Yes, totally. Another person who has joined recently is Tariq Fisher. Now, they are an associate writer at Rockstar Games. They've been there a year and a month. TV writer, currently writing an animated series coming to Disney Junior and Disney Plus. The interesting bit about Tariq is that they were an associate writer on pedestrian and ambient dialogue from January 2024 to December 2024, so all of last year. And then as of December 24, they have now become an associate game writer for Open World, December 2024 to present. And the little just comment under that says promoted, little smiley face, still NDA. So this is interesting that they have gone from writing pedestrian and ambient dialogue, which I imagine is a lot of half conversations and the kind of things that you'll hear when you're walking past people or things that people shout at you in the street, to now open world. And I would struggle to speculate maybe what the difference is between those two things, like open world writing versus pedestrian and ambient dialogue writing. But clearly there is a difference, and enough to have a different position within the team.
I'm struggling with that because if I think of open world writing, I would think of, the things that happen in the open world, like pedestrian and ambient dialogue. They sound like they could be the same thing. I don't know if anyone smarter than us in the comments can add any thoughts or speculation to that, but I do wonder what the difference is with specific open world writing.
I mean, I guess it could be pedestrian ambient dialogue, like we say, is the NPCs who are wandering around. Open world could be more of a strangers and freaks type missions, the things that are sort of self-contained stories within themselves but do happen within the open world but aren't part of the core main story writing that the main characters are going through. It's
maybe it's difference between bumping into someone or some one-off an interaction that's cute but doesn't really go anywhere versus an event that is self-contained, like maybe not on the core mission packs, but it does have a bigger implication than just watch out, buddy.
Yes.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah, instead of, you're bumping into someone and they're like, hey, watch where you're going, versus you go up to someone and they're like, can you help find my cat?
Yeah, and there's like a mini thing that unlocks from that. Who knows, right? But that does sound plausible.
Yeah, and there's a bit of interest here that you would assume, like, maybe this person has just moved teams, but pedestrian ambient dialogue now could be almost completed, and they need now to move on to open world things and expand on that a bit more to get those over the line. Next up on the list, we've got Jordan Drew, who is the writer of Veep and The Thick of It. Their description on their website says Jordan is an Emmy, WGA, and WGGB award-winning British writer known for his work on the hit political comedy series Veep, and is currently writing on Deutschland 89 for UFA Fiction, as well as writing for Rockstar Games. Two quite big, pretty well-known political comedies going on here. He only recently, I think, in the same kind of period as the first person we talked about, Jeff, joined to do that kind of writing. But this could give you an idea of why would you bring in someone who's very good at political satire if you're not going to have some political satire in your game?
100%.
There is a couple more. We've got Tony Grenage, who is the casting director and producer. They were at Rockstar Games from December 2010 to January 2020. So they did a 9-year stint there. Worked on games that you would expect: L.A. Noire, Max Payne 3, Grand Theft Auto 5, Grand Theft Auto Online, Red Dead Redemption 2, Red Dead Online. Then they left to go to Riot Games for about a year. And then they came back as lead producer at Rockstar Games from December 2023 to present. This, I think, is interesting because it shows that there's some heritage here. Tony's worked across a lot of other Rockstar titles, left to go and do some other things, and then in 2023 came back, as lead producer, which you would suggest probably also works with casting directors. But to have someone who has cast all of those games before, which have been cast brilliantly, to then come back into the fold and maybe look at casting some more people. As we say, by December 2023, most of that principal casting is done. We've got the lead actors locked in. You've probably got a lot of the supporting actors locked in, but there might be some other things in here where you'll see similar things of fringe characters coming in that Tony might be able to work with. And finally, we have Michael Unsworth, who was at Rockstar until 2023. And the interesting bit here is maybe, as we'll talk about in a minute, maybe this means the main story is done now. Mike was part of a super talented creative team now at Absurd Ventures, which is Dan Houser's new studio, where Dan Houser and Laszlo Jones went off to make some new games. Laszlo obviously is heavily involved in the GTA radio stations as well as writing on GTA 5. But Mike is now helping to bring exciting new IP to life across a wide range of different media. Previously, he spent 16 years working at Rockstar as a creative lead on some of the most critically acclaimed and commercially successful video game franchises of all time, including Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption. This includes the following titles: Grand Theft Auto 6, Red Dead Redemption 2, Grand Theft Auto 5, Max Payne 3, L.A. Noire, Red Dead Redemption, Grand Theft Auto 4. So, as I say, Mike has been there until 2023, lists Grand Theft Auto 6 as one of the projects that he's worked on, but has now left to go and join Dan Houser at their other studio. I would say that suggests whatever Mike was working on was completed, and he has now left to go and do other work. Does that mean that in 2023 the core story was complete? I mean, I would suggest and speculate maybe yes.
Yeah, I would. I would think the core, because of the way this thing flows and how long it takes to execute on the vision and then debug, and so much time is spent in the execution of what looks like we've finished, we've written the story, we know where the world is, now we've just got to actually make it and make it bug free and make it move. That can take years, so I could easily believe that the core story was in place. It doesn't mean they don't rewrite sections, and like you go, this section's almost working, it's a bit long, let's take these lines out, drop this bit, yeah, it flows better.
Yeah,
That's
and
fine.
that's maybe why some of these other people have been brought in at this stage to punch up some of those bits that everyone felt like this is good, but it needs a little bit more work.
Yeah.
Bring in some extra writers to work on that stuff.
So we're still doing the same things. It's just a bit funny or a bit shorter, a bit more edited. That makes sense.
So given all of those people now that we know, are writing, doing extra bits on 6, what do we think the overall themes are going to be? I thought we could talk about this a little bit. We can think that it's in the same universe as GTA 5. We've talked about some of the 2022 leaks already. There were references to things that happened in GTA 5 in those videos. So definitely within the same universe, those events are going to be referenced, some of them. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the overall themes, Dan, that you mentioned at the top, and what things we might expect to see. I know we've probably covered this here and there throughout the previous episodes, but now we know some of the writing talent behind it. Does that give you any other hints?
My feeling has always been Rockstar's games, GTA games, are about the American dream and different elements of the American dream. And as we move through time, they've explored different facets of that. So I would say that their first attempt at like proper storytelling in the GTA universe was probably GTA 4, if I'm being completely honest. I think that was even from the very first trailer, where you hear this idea of things will be different here. And that was essentially an immigrant's tale of somebody who thought they were moving to a better life, and what that means in the melting pot of what was then modern America. GTA 5 is kind of an exploration of what happens once you've achieved the American dream, particularly Michael's character. Michael is someone who's technically won. He's got out, he's retired, and it's an exploration of his middle-age apathy, I guess, and the need to still do something. And then he ends up aligning himself with, Franklin, who's on the other side of the coin, where he's looking to make it. And then Trevor, who, I don't know, he's just an agent of chaos. And their unity, and some of it's for gameplay reasons, but it's an exploration of the day after tomorrow, the day you've succeeded. The end of the story isn't the end of the story. Now, what will 6 say about modern America and the American dream? Like we obviously we don't know yet. We do know it's, like we say, a Bonnie and Clyde tale, which seems to be led through 2 characters, a man and a woman. So we believe they seem to be performing what seems like relatively low-scale robberies, and not even heists. It looks like robberies. This is what we've even seen through the leaks. That, in a way, feels a bit low-key for where you expect a GTA game to go. Given that most GTA games ultimately end in you driving sports cars in a jetpack or some sort of madness like that. That doesn't feel in tune with. Remember when we were robbing the convenience store?
Yeah,
it's a big leap from that to that. Now, I've always felt that the biggest story tell in the trailer is the scene at the end where they're together, and there's that line between them, the trust line. And that, for me, parlays into what's the biggest theme in probably the world in the last 5 to 8 years. And since the first Trump presidency, the feeling that objective fact no longer exists, and people have their own version of the truth. And I wonder if GTA 6 will be an exploration of this truth and this truth, and by maybe exposing you to different people's perspectives, you may get to see 2 different sides of what is the same story that to each of them meant something else. That's total speculation. I don't know that. It could be that the two of them, Jason and Lucia, are super aligned and they're both like goodies or baddies. Or it could be that they're, together for a reason, but actually have very different motivations and belief systems, which would probably make for a more interesting story. Because yes, they're bound by fate or whatever it is that brings them together, or in a shared goal, but it might be that actually their view of why they're doing this thing could be really, really different. And I think that would be a much more interesting start point to tell a story of modern America. And it even goes back to, like I said at the start of the show, us saying we almost can't be sure, is this leaker true, not true? How do you present yourself to look true in a world that's so deeply cynical and it's so easy to fake, and no one believes anyone? Like we said, we were struggling to do at the start of the show.
Yeah.
That's a great theme for a GTA, I think, and would get to the heart of what modern America is in the same way they've done migration, middle-aged malaise. But America keeps rolling. This is it. There's no end of history. If I want to make this super noodly, and I'm going to briefly, like back in 1999, a really renowned political theorist called Francis Fukuyama wrote a essay called The End of History, in which he postulated that there was no more politics to be had, because essentially the Cold War, what felt like the collapse of the Berlin Wall, communism was failing. The sense it was that liberal democracy had triumphed for all time. And in 1999, this felt true. It felt like no other solution to reality could exist. 3 years on, you've got 9/11. Before you know it, you've got the rise of the populists. Then you've got the world today, where it feels like we're moving away from globalization. It's not the end of history. We were wrong.
Yeah, the book was wrong.
Yeah, and he's written, and Francis Fukuyama has written a follow-up to acknowledge that, to go, yeah, I said it was the end. Turns out it wasn't, because history keeps moving and rolling and repeating itself. What does it say? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. All of those things are rich themes for a GTA. So rich is difficult to do in a game where a lot of the fun is shooting people in the kneecaps and driving vans and cars. But I think they'd be, if I was in that room thinking of the overarching plot of GTA, let's say 2016, when probably this got going in serious, that was when Trump first came in. And that was when we first started asking questions about trust, Facebook manipulation, all those different things. I expect all of that to be laid through GTA. Sorry, that's my top line.
Yeah.
I think there's so many things though within that, I think, that will be part of the plot.
Yeah. I can see, you can see the two, or however many lead characters are, let's say two for now, coming together, like you say, because they need money, but they actually might have different views on the events that led them to need money. I can see the shorthand version of that is conspiracy theories throughout GTA 6, and this isn't UFOs and Bigfoot conspiracy theories. This is like, one of them questioning things that they've seen on TV and the other one believing it, and them having a conflict in that kind of thing. Or, I wouldn't be surprised if COVID gets referenced, or at least the GTA version of COVID, and
100%.
one of them is fully on board and the other one is like, I don't know if this was actually the right way to do it or whatever. And, they have some kind of conflict there, but also, all right, let's forget about that and go rob this shop for a bit and come back to this later. Like, all of that stuff can be weaved into the story pretty well, I think. In terms of some other things that might happen, I can see some real world TV shows and events with a GTA skew being referenced in GTA 6, so that, we had the equivalent of X Factor in GTA 5. What could be in GTA 6? Well, we've had Squid Game, massively popular TV show recently. Tiger King came out in 2020.
Yeah, God, it feels like a million years ago, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, it's 5 years ago, so it doesn't feel that bad.
But for the development of this game, it's fair game. And actually, a character like Tiger King would be perfect for the Everglades. Or for, you almost feel like this, certainly someone who's going to be a bit like Tiger King.
Definitely. I'm sure you'll come across a house that's got wild animals in it. Mr. Robot was around a similar kind of time, which is all about hacking and government conspiracy and all of that kind of thing. And Glow was a big hit, 2017 to 2019. We've seen a bit of backyard wrestling in the trailer. Maybe that gets expanded upon in this kind of in GTA 6. But there's quite a lot of very popular TV things that felt like that they were changing the way that TV was consumed and developed at the time. Tiger King was a big example of, we can just do real world documentaries now for 8 episodes, an hour long each. And now, you can't get enough of true crime and 24 hours in police custody, all of that kind of thing. It's everywhere. And of course, as we've said before, you don't really need to parody America anymore because it's full of ridiculous stories that have actually happened. So it's not like there's things that are going to run out. You can always just look back at real life and say, we'll just put that in the game, and it will, the problem for them, I guess, is it won't feel like parody anymore because you're like, that's just a real event that happened in America. But
yeah, Dan Houser did say that, didn't he? I think he said that it's almost impossible to parody America. Whether that was kind of his parting shot, it's not my problem anymore. He knew he was leaving, almost like my mission is done. There's nothing more to be said, which is an argument. But it's so fascinating. I think the idea that a large GTA 6 has been produced, probably got going in earnest, let's say 2016. So it would have been like a Trump incumbency, which would have led to one stream of thinking. Then a big chunk of the game would have been developed under Biden's time, 2020 to 2024, which had a different narrative. But the game will be released into, barring something really unforeseeable, the Trump presidency, where the world's going to feel different again. And the thing I think will be interesting, like you were saying up top, you don't think the plot will fundamentally change. Like, I agree, but I also, we'll never know either way, will we?
No.
We'll never know what an alternate version of this story will be. I guess that what a lot of people will be looking for is, are Rockstar going to be as ruthless, rigorous, unkind to everybody in the way they used to be? And I think probably there's people on the team who might have written those things who feel regret and feel like I would never write that again. But then we're also moving into a period in time where people think we've gone too far in terms of, not being able to talk about certain groups. And that's going to be Trump's America. And I'm not saying there's right or wrong, and there's definitely some wrong in that, right? Like there definitely is, but it just creates a different dynamic. And it's how much Rockstar stayed the course to what they believe is their stance on parody and lampooning people from whatever political affiliation they associate with. And I actually think whatever they do, either side will tear it apart and go.
Of course. Yeah,
So,
this isn't the game we wanted.
Which ties back to that central narrative of like the objective truth. What is it anymore in this sort of modern social media age? It's going to land into a world of, you're too much this, you're too much that. Of course it will.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How much is this all going to cost? Like, what is going to be the price of GTA 6? Very recently, in the last couple of days, now if you're listening to this on Wednesday, there's been a games industry analyst who has claimed that companies hope GTA 6 will cost somewhere between $80 and $100 on release. That analyst is called Michael Ball. He is the CEO of Ellipleon, something like that.
Epilion. It's Matthew Ball. He's
Ball,
CEO of Epilion and author of the Metaverse book. He's actually famous-ish within the sort of B2B space. Every single year he publishes a State of Video Gaming report, which is like an amazing, super deep dive of data. So like this year's one is a mere, how many slides, James?
Just 222 slides for you all to look at. It's publicly available. You can go to his website and click through them and see all the graphs. But, good luck to you if you can get through all 222 slides. What he has said is that, yes, there is hope within the industry that GTA 6 will cost upwards of $100 to justify another price increase for games. He has said the hike is needed for market growth and that companies are hoping GTA 6 will start the trend of all games across the board becoming more expensive. Now, we've seen a little bit of this from Strauss Zelnick in the past. In May 24, in the earnings call then, he said that the company's goal centers on delivering more value than what we charge, which, I mean, is all GTA games anyway, but it's the difference in what they perceive that value to be and, how much more value they're giving than what they are charging. So I think we should talk about what we would expect that to be. Right now in 2025, around $70 is the new normal price for a major release. In the UK, it's like £70, so there's no difference basically between dollar and pounds. A copy of Indiana Jones, which is the thing as we were researching this that I could think of was the one of the most recent high-profile-ish releases, is $69.99 right now on Amazon for a Windows 10 digital code. Not even any disc or box. That's just £70 digital code. So what is the hours in versus cost? What do we think? I can throw off, I think, £80/$80 for a standard release edition could be very possible, with then maybe $120/$pounds for a premium edition, which comes with a few, whatever that is, add-ons in terms of if it's DLC, if it's outfits, if it's weapon packs, like that kind of stuff. And then there was almost certainly going to be a collector's edition, and I can see that coming in at $150, probably more like £200 for the big, that's the thing that where you get your inflatable alligator, you get your rubber ring, you get a map, you get all that kinds of stuff. Do those prices feel real to I guess for the first thing, do you think it's going to go up? Do you think GTA 6 is going to be an above average release?
I don't know.
Nobody knows.
What I will say is, to talk about a little bit about the Matthew Ball analysis. Obviously, I haven't read the 222 slides, but I have read Game Developer did a 5 things we've learned from the Matthew Ball.
That's handy.
Which was really helpful. And the strapline was, we read it so you don't have to, etc. One of the themes he correctly identifies is that the current state of AAA, or almost like quadruple A gaming, is completely unsustainable. The cost base is outrageous. Games are, and he uses the example very particularly of Spider-Man 2, which I think Spider-Man, I'm sort of praising these figures, so please correct me. I'm sorry if I get this wrong. He was saying basically Spider-Man 1 cost in the region of, say, 100 million. Did really well, sold really well, really good game. Spider-Man 2 cost something like, particularly when you're rolling marketing, 200 to 300 million, but didn't sell any more copies. Straight away, the maths of that says we can't keep going down this path. We've added all these people to make this game bigger, better, more amazing than it ever was. More people aren't buying it. That is not a sustainable path for AAA games. You can't. The maths doesn't work. So, one alternative. Well, the alternatives are you either cut costs somehow, and that probably means shorter development times, less people, so people lose jobs, or you outsource it to other parts of the world that are cheaper, or you use AI sacrilegiously, which everyone hates for obvious reasons, but that does reduce costs. All of those things reduce costs. Or you increase the price. So $100 video game, whilst on one hand feels like heresy, for the people who make games, they're like, oh my God, please normalize that, Rockstar, because that might be the only way we can make any of this make sense. Because if we carry on down this path of paying hundreds and hundreds, thousands maybe, of very highly skilled, highly paid developers to make a game over a 3 to 6 year development cycle, there's no guarantee that these games are going to sell. The industry needs it. The thing is, though, GTA is the outlier. It's probably the only game that almost everyone in the world buys. You're almost duty-bound to buy it. Yeah. So $100. Of course, you'd pay $100 for it, and it would honestly be value.
Yeah,
I-
absolutely.
I think there'd be sticker shock at the idea of $100 standalone video game. So that whether or not it is going to cost that much, what I might say is there a world where the pricing, for example, if you had to pay for Netflix up front, you pay, let's say $10 a month, right, on average. So you're paying $120 a year over a decade, $1,200 for Netflix. You would never say, I'm going to pay $1,200 now for infinite Netflix or 10 years of Netflix. So they have to break it up into monthly costings. So is there a world where this is, and I guess it will be all these things, but is it just going to be, if you pay $100, how much more are you obliged to invest in GTA to keep playing it? Will GTA Online be free, or like free in the same way Fortnite is, where it's free, but actually you feel pressure to invest? That's where the business modeling of this is fascinating. But I do think there's a world where they just put the upfront price higher, because there are going to be people who just don't play online. They've got to recoup the cost somehow.
So obviously the suggested rumored budget of GTA 6, unconfirmed, was like $2 billion. We don't know how accurate that is or not, but
What's that? Sorry, how much?
$2 billion.
$2 billion for what?
To make GTA 6. That's their
No.
currently reported budget.
No, that would be the most expensive video game by an order of magnitude that's beyond belief.
Well, I mean, it's been 10 years since they've been
I
working
suppose.
on that game, and
I suppose
people
so,
are
yeah.
expensive.
Like, I think Star Citizen is the world's currently most expensive game, which has cost close to $1 billion. But that's essentially run by, well, I don't want to get into legal trouble. Draw your own conclusions about the way that game's being funded. It's largely through an on-running Kickstarter, which seems like it's never going to end. I think, like, traditional AAA game dev, like in terms of reported figures, it's in the 300 to 400 million mark, I think.
Yeah. Well,
But,
okay.
but like, you know, maybe you're right. I could actually believe it because it's been going for 10 years and there's that many people working on it. Maybe it will be that level of cost.
I think that was like, it came out of a leak that, you know, that's a number that was bandied around for a while, like last year. Let's, you know, even if you're being conservative and saying it's 1 billion, if, say, the game was $80 or £80 and you sold 200 million units of that game, they would bring in, well, just in sales and ignoring all the tax and everything else they have to pay on it, like 1.6 billion pounds or dollars.
Yeah.
So 200 million units, give or take, maybe breaks even with the development costs if it is suspected to be around $1 billion. So, you know, that is a lot of copies of that game they have to sell. And that's just the upfront cost. Obviously, like you say, then you've got GTA Online and its ongoing presence and shark cards or whatever that ends up being. I think what they would hope to do, well, definitely what they would hope to do, is break even on base game sales right off the bat. So you sell that many copies of the game and then you're like, good, we've covered all the costs. Everything else now is lovely profit in terms of, you know, GTA Online and shark cards and that kind of thing. So and that's at £80. So that doesn't feel like too much of a stretch to me to make it $10 or £10 more than what the current AAAs are coming in at. Obviously, this will be released towards the end of this year anyway. If not, fingers crossed this doesn't happen. If not, in 2026. A lot of things would have changed by then. I can see an $80 price tag for a once in a, which is what this is, a once in a generation game being $80. You're like, okay, fine. Like, I'll pay that. The problem is with GTA 5, you know, we've had to buy that game about 5 times. So like it goes up and up and up. But that's, you know, that's just par for the course, I think. So yeah, like I think all in all, what I'm saying is I wouldn't be surprised or upset if it was £80, $80 when it eventually comes out.
No, and for Take-Two or Rockstar, even putting $10 on the price is huge for their profits, because if over its lifetime, let's say GTA 6 outsells GTA 5, GTA 5 is sort of reported to have sold about, let's say, 205 million copies. That's just the base game. That's copy sales, which is made in the region of $8.5 billion. So if you put even $10 on it, $10 on 205 million units, it's an awful lot of money.
Yeah, enough.
It's a load. And if you're putting $30 in each unit, wow. And that's without whatever the model is for GTA Online, which you assume will be on running at minimum similar-ish to what they're doing. You know, and GTA Online has made money hand over fist.
Yeah, and what we've said, that is just, you know, if everyone bought the base game, which they're not going to do. You know, loads of people want the premium edition. Loads of people want the super mega exclusive edition, the collector's edition, all of those different things as well, which will go up in scale. So, you know, if you are going to be surprised that the cost goes up for GTA 6, maybe this is the year to start saving some pennies and finding yourself an extra $10 or so when you have to eventually buy the game.
Yeah, and my last thing I'll say is even if Rockstar do manage to break the glass ceiling and sell this game for $100, the industry might think that's good and go, yay, Rockstar have normalized $100. There are not many GTAs out there.
No, I'm not paying $100 for many other games other than GTA.
And I mean, not to pick on a game, Assassin's Creed, like that's going to have to do some to justify $100 price, right? And games like that are probably currently feeling the heat. And it is games like your Spider-Man 2s, not to pick on that. It's an excellent video game, but, you know, predominantly single-player video game with a sort of fixed base of users, the maths doesn't add up. You know, this is a different and separate podcast. The maths of video games currently doesn't add up to the point where everyone thought live service games were the answer. Just this weekend, we've had reports about Sony cancelling 2 live service games. One of them was a God of War live service game, which feels like it should work. Too risky.
Yeah, well, and there's only space in the market for so many live service games. And
of course,
the massive ones exist and continue to exist. And it's really hard to pull people away from those things.
They're not going away. And the most played service games are all, I think, 6 to 7 years old. The reason for that is basically that's when Fortnite launched. That's what it really means. But yeah, those games aren't going away. They're still here to stay. So it's tough out there.
Well, let us know your thoughts about the pricing and everything that we've discussed today if you're listening on YouTube in the comments below. If not, you can send us a tweet at GTAVOclock, or you can get in touch via email gtavIoclock@gmail.com. Just before we go, just a reminder that Take Two's next earning call is Thursday, the 6th of February, which is when we might get some answers to some of the questions we posed over the last 50 odd weeks, which is just 2 more episodes after this one. So if you've got this far through this week's episode, 2 more to go, and then we will get some more financial fun to talk about. Until then, thank you all for listening, and please come back next Wednesday for another episode of GTA 6 O'Clock.